Hi, I'm Jim. This is my wife, Doris. We have lived here in Buell, at the edge of Buell. We have an acreage here. We've lived here for the last 3 years. Before that, we lived out on the farm out northwest of Buell. We lived out there for 54 years.
My dad was a mechanic in Buell, and we lived at the edge of Buell, and he used to stay up till all hours of the morning working on tractors for farmers that needed their tractors, and then we would take him home, and Mom would follow him and pick him up and bring him back. So kind of involved in agriculture.
I grew up on a farm. My folks farmed south of Castleford when I was born. Dad bought a farm south of Murtaugh Lake when I was about 6, so spent my first 3 years in school in Murtaugh. Then he bought a farm northwest of Buell, and that's kind of where I grew up. Doris's cousin and I were good friends. We ran around. I bought a 57 Chevy when I was 14 years old, so he and I run around a lot, but I couldn't drive at night. And so we had his sister, who was Doris's cousin, drive for us at nights. So that's basically how we met. And I guess she's been driving for me ever since. So anyhow, that's how we met back in high school days. So.
Well, for one thing, we dated for a couple of years, and that's what he said, I'll never milk cows. So we didn't know we were going to be dairy farmers at that time. So.
Well, I had grown up on the dairy, and my dad always milked cows, and I didn't like to get up in the mornings and do chores, so I was not very enthused about becoming a dairyman. So that was kind of what we decided before we got married. But probably 2.5 years later, after I worked at a potato processing plant and the sugar factory, I kind of decided I liked being my own boss. So we ended up buying an 80-acre farm, and I started buying a few cows, and we milked with my dad in a flat barn for a few years, and then in '72 I built a new barn on our farm. And so
actually, you milked in the barn on our place, that big old.
We did have a big,
whatever
2-story barn with a hay mound in it, and I insulated the walls with cardboard boxes. And milked about 35 head there for, probably a couple of years. Well, when we started out, we bought a farm, the 80 acres. I think we paid $24,000 for it at the time, which in today's money, that's not much money. But anyhow, back then, it was quite a bit for a young couple. And we just paid down on the farm, so we didn't have money to build a house. We went to the bank, and they told us that we had to get a parcel deeded, and the fellow we bought the house from was old, and his eyesight was bad. He lived in Arizona, and he didn't want to deed us a spot to build a house, so we ended up buying a 24 by 24 house out by the Buell water storage that actually was built in 1924, but it had no bathroom in it. So we moved it out to the farm. We added on 12 foot, so we had a 24 by 36 house with a bathroom. And that was one of the hard times for us. About every 5 years, we built onto the house on the farm. We'd borrow enough money to build a little more, so it probably ended up over 4,000 square feet time we finished, but that's pretty much where we raised our family. We had 4 children while we were young, and Doris worked as a nurse at the hospital. Well, she worked for a doctor for a while, a pediatrician, and then later she worked at Green Giant as a nurse for several years. So the kids all worked on the dairy. They all fed cows, and even the daughter. Actually, our daughter was probably the best milker out of all of them. And the oldest one liked to do records. They all kind of had things they liked and didn't like to do on the dairy, but they all ended up with a good work ethic. So
lots of memories. David, our third son, one time decided to ride his motorcycle across the
dry manure pile.
He thought it was a dry manure pond. It looked dry on top, one of the ponds below the dairy, and he zoomed out across, and all of a sudden he went down. It
sank in. We had to take the loader out, rope the handlebars of the motorcycle and pull it up with the loader and back it out. We did
have some times.
Yeah, we did.
I used to drive corn truck when we would chop corn, and he drove the chopper and I would drive the truck. And we had this one old guy that, the truck that he was driving, the fender was bent in from where he would run into the tractor, but he never did say anything to him. But me, he'd go or this way and give all these hand signals. And one time he was quite irate and don't remember what he said or whatever, but I just turned the truck off and got out and walked to the house. So he was a little better after that.
I guess if I was to give the children piece of advice, I'm not sure they would take it, but if I was to give them a piece of advice, it would be to do the best at what they do it to the best of their ability, and not give up. Things aren't always easy, and sometimes you have to keep at it. So
to just keep on trying. I remember there's been a lot of talk right now about all the interest rates keep going up, and actually there was one year that our feed loan was 18%?
When we bought the farm.
And we managed the storm. You just have to keep trying and everything will be all right. Just have to hang in there.